Dr. Ozzie Jones here, and today we're going to talk about, is work-life balance a myth for practice owners? We have what I call the island club of doctors that have literally moved to different islands and resorts and mountains and dream locations all over the world. And it's just so cool to see that there is a possibility for you to create your dream life. But I ultimately want to unpack whether this is a myth or not. And ultimately, I think you already know by now that it's not a myth, and I want to unpack why it's a myth. So ultimately, when I was first starting out, I was working in the office 30 to 35 hours a week, but then outside the office on external marketing and on team training and on all the other things that you need to do in a health center. I was constantly working. And it was something that I absolutely loved to do. It was like taking up the majority of my energy and time, but it was my passion. But after doing that over and over and over again, doing team trainings, inside events, outside events, right? Inside of marketing events are things you do in your office. Outside events are things you do outside your office. It was like I didn't really have a whole lot of time to do anything else. And so what I found myself doing was working on Saturdays, working on Sundays. And it's ultimately not what I wanted to sign up for my future. So I want to ask you the question that I asked myself. Is this what I wanted my life to look like by this time in my life? And as a young doctor, I was like, you know what? This is not necessarily what I wanted to do. And I talked to DCs, NDs, MDs, right? Almost every doctor that I talk to, they want an upgrade in their work-life balance. They want an upgrade in their life. And ultimately, work-life balance as a doctor is extremely important. But that whole nomenclature of work-life balance, what I've learned is that it is somewhat of an error in thinking, in that a lot of the if you look at a high-performing athlete, for instance, they invest a lot of time into getting to the Olympics, for instance, or coming up on a big championship or World Series or whatever it might be. And so there's sprints and then there's recovery, and there's sprints and recovery. And so I look at the type of doctors that I am attracting and the type of doctors that I've worked with. They look at themselves kind of like an athlete, where they're entrepreneurial doctors that are kind of like athletes, where they want to work in sprints. And so we teach working in sprints, but maintaining a relatively amazing balance in the cadence of rhythm and rhythms throughout a week, throughout a quarter, throughout a year. So yes, it is possible because we have done it. But the root cause of this imbalance comes from really three main areas that I want you to think about. The first thing is that you're ultimately being run by your business. You're not running your business is running you. Other people would say you're on a hamster wheel. Other people would say that you're a slave to your business. You ultimately want to work more on it than you want to do working in it. You want your business working for you. That creates freedom. And I know that some of the limiting beliefs out there is like, oh, I can't do that. I'm hands-on, or I need to see patients physically in order to do X, Y, and Z. And I'll tell you that once you're open to the possibility of creating automation and creating an ability to scale and serve and help people in unique and creative ways, what ends up happening is you get off the hamster wheel. You see access to the island that I'm talking about that is not necessarily the daily grind, the in and out, the burnout, the frustration with all of the paperwork that you have to do every single day, etc. So number two is there's no mastery on your time. And I'd love for you to watch a video I've recently done on time management. And if you like the content I'm putting out, definitely punch that subscribe button and stay plugged into the content that we're putting out there, or go to healthexpertsalliance.com and sign up to our newsletter. But ultimately, there's no mastery of your time, and there's a commitment, and there's ultimately no commitment to upgrading your schedule and your time month after month, year after year. And this is something I'm constantly looking at, because what I've done over the years is I've worked with a lot of very successful doctors, and then in my private practice, I've worked with a lot of executives and entrepreneurs and high-level people, and I see how they manage their time. And everything is specific to, creating these systems around time. So definitely check out that video to learn a little bit more. But ultimately, I want you to win. I want you to be very, very successful in life. And in order for you to do that, you have to get out of the reaction kind of loop that a lot of us are in. We're constantly putting out fires, and we're not taking any breathing room and putting any time to look at what we can do to ultimately upgrade. So work-life balance is possible for doctors, and doctors' work-life balance is accessible to you if you are committed to creating a little bit of space to look at what you can do to access an upgraded schedule, and ultimately create time for you to have that balance, create time to work on your business, to actually create systems that generate freedom for you, which is why I created the Virtual Practice Accelerator, because it created an immense amount of freedom for me. And a lot of our doctors now have a ton of hybrid brick and mortar and virtual practices where they're generating residual income. They've got their virtual practice that's, they've got a coach in, helping with people going through that process. And all of a sudden they're working smart. They're not working hard anymore, right? So a lot of the systems and strategies that I'm going to be educating you on in the future works cross-contextually for the unique things that exist for you, like a virtual practice and these online residual income generating strategies, as well as brick and mortar. So stay plugged in, because these are such innovative ideas. But how is essentially this solution different than everything you've heard before? Number one is you don't have to have the challenges that you've dealt with in the past. And that I specifically dealt with. And the issue that I dealt with was I didn't have time to spend with my loved ones. I didn't have time to visit my mom and dad up in Canada. I didn't have time to ultimately see space for children. Now I homeschool my kids. I travel the world. We've over-traveled. We're to the point where we've traveled so much that we're kind of sick of it. But we'd travel up to 5 to 6 months of the year, right? We'd go to and we would create that freedom for ourselves that so many of our mastermind members and clients have done now for themselves as well. And so your past doesn't need to be like your future. You can create a lot of freedom to travel, to be with your kids, to homeschool, to do the things to build more businesses and work on different things that will help to even upgrade the current business that you're in, right? So that's huge. Number two is that we need to help you, and you need to help yourself ultimately reverse engineer your dream life. Start with what your dream life looks like and then work backwards. What ended up starting me educating doctors on all of these different systems that I built and developed for practice and virtual practice was doctors listening to me learn in this functional medicine kind of summit on reverse engineering your dream life. And they're like, wait a minute, you're working 2 days a week and you're making 7 figures and you're traveling the world and you're doing all these different things and you've automated all this and you've created all this freedom without compromising the impact that you're making while driving more income. That's amazing. And so they would ask me like, hey, can you coach me? Can I learn from you? And that's actually what got me into launching Health Experts Alliance. And now I'm excited to be able to create content for you. The other thing, number 3, is follow the laws of constraints. Now, when people are looking at their calendar and their ideal way of life, they're like, wait a minute, like I don't have as much time for marketing anymore. Well, I don't have as much time for patients anymore, or something along those lines. And they're like, how am I going to make a living? But understand the law of constraints. This comes out of Harvard, and this is a true law in that when you constrain your time, you become more productive, more efficient, and you think differently. right? So all these top executives understand the law of constraints, but ultimately doctors, they don't understand this as much. But we just recently had a doctor that went down to 2 days a week in his practice. He's doing $2.5 million in revenue in his practice, right? This is a brick and mortar practice. This is somebody that has innovated in the ways that we've recommended, and it's pretty cool to see what they've done. But he's following the law of constraints, and he said he's more productive and he's seeing a better output on his time than he's ever had, and he's making more money than he's ever had. That's the power of the law of constraints, right? They also call it the theory of restraints or constraints. The number 4 thing is the Eisenhower Matrix. You take all of the things that you're doing, right, in a day, in a week, and you ask yourself, what's urgent, right? What's very important, what's important, and what can be delegated. There are 4 quadrants, and you put different things. Maybe you put them on Post-it notes, and you just, you put them in the different quadrants of the things that are the most important, very important, etc. Some people even have this in their practices, and their whole team looks at, okay, what's the most urgent thing that needs to get done today? What's very important, and what can we delegate, or what can we do to have other people on the team support us in getting things done. So that's the Eisenhower Matrix. And then you ultimately want to understand the concept of multiplying activities and multipliers. So this is something I've studied over the years, and it is extremely powerful, but it's understanding what multiplying activities you can do to create more time, to create more automation, to create more revenue, and create more transformation in the people that you're wanting to serve. And there's a lot of those. Ultimately, this individual that brought his days down to 2 days a week, he implemented a lot of these multipliers into his business, and it was one of the things that helped him create what he's created today. So thank you so much for watching. Definitely punch that subscribe button if you want to get more exciting information around the strategy that will help you create more freedom, income, and impact in your practice. I look forward to adding more value to you in the near future. And if you also thought that this was very valuable, I'd love for you to share it with a colleague, a friend, and get more people to understand this powerful information that will ultimately help you understand that it is not a myth for doctors to have work-life balance, and you can have ultimately work-life balance as a doctor as well. So thank you so much. Have an awesome, awesome day.